In the heart of the galactic Concord, beneath a ceiling that shimmered with simulated stars and swirling nebulae, the leaders of the most powerful alien civilizations gathered in their usual circle. The Yilvans sat in their crystalline shells, whispering through fractal antennae. The Thrynak floated lazily in their gravity pods, each movement trailing glowing ink that formed short-lived patterns in the air. The Valarians, tall and flame-skinned, stood with arms crossed, their golden eyes flickering with disdain. At the center, a raised platform hovered just above the ground, and on it stood a single human, Ambassador Kira Miles, dressed in Earth's dark diplomatic suit, her expression calm and unreadable. Behind her, the hologram of Earth's newest announcement hovered, a sleek, black silhouette of what the humans called a 7th-Dimensional prototype vessel, codenamed the Ascendant Dawn. The room was silent for 3 seconds. Then laughter erupted, dry, hissing, rumbling laughter from every corner. The Yilvans clicked their shells in amusement, the Thrynak recorded the moment for their comedy channels, and the Valarians openly sneered. Earth, after just 200 years of interstellar involvement, was now claiming mastery over dimensions that even the oldest species hadn't fully understood. It was impossible, arrogant, and to them, laughable. Several Concord representatives made formal jokes about the announcement, their words carefully crafted to humiliate while still sounding polite. One Thrynak suggested that Earth might have confused a 7th dimension with a software update. A Valarian diplomat proposed sanctions against Earth for spreading what he called pseudoscientific nonsense. Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber, but Kara didn't react. She didn't argue or try to explain. Instead, with quiet confidence, she reached into her coat and pulled out a black cube, sleek, cold, and humming faintly with inner light. She walked to the center of the platform and placed it carefully on the Concord table. The cube began to glow softly. "This," she said, "is proof." Her voice was steady, and despite the vastness of the chamber, everyone heard her clearly. The Ascendant Dawn is real. Its systems are stable. It launches in 7 days. Silence fell again, but this time it felt heavier, filled with an edge of discomfort. The laughter had stopped. For a moment, none of the Concord leaders knew what to say. The cube wasn't just a prop. It was an active data core. Several races recognized its design as a quantum-encrypted device used for secure knowledge transfers. The Valarians narrowed their eyes. The Threnak's glow dimmed slightly. The Yilvans clicked with less confidence now. One Concord scientist leaned in and whispered something to his superior, something about energy signatures in the cube that shouldn't exist in current physics. Kara simply stood there, hands folded behind her back, her expression unreadable. She didn't need to say more. The cube would remain on the Concord table, accessible only to those cleared to examine it. Earth had brought evidence, not just words, and Earth had issued a timeline. As she turned and walked away, the silence in the chamber held. No one laughed now. Deep inside their pride and superiority, a small seed of unease had been planted in the minds of the galaxy's most powerful species. Earth had always been unpredictable. From the moment they joined the stars, they had grown too fast, learned too quickly, adapted too easily. And now they were claiming access to a dimension no one else even understood. Many still didn't believe it. Many still thought it was another clever bluff. But now the thought lingered. What if it wasn't? Deep beneath the gray surface of Earth's moon, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy, a vast underground facility pulsed with quiet energy. Inside its deepest chamber, the ship known as the Ascendant Dawn rested like a sleeping beast, sharp, black, and unnaturally smooth, shaped like a dagger that had been forged not just with metal, but with laws of physics no longer obeying their old rules. The walls of the chamber hummed faintly, reacting to the strange field the ship gave off, a distortion that couldn't be explained in normal scientific terms. At the heart of the vessel was a drive called Elysium Prime, a system that didn't just bend space. It was said to fold it inward, sideways, and sometimes in directions no compass could point to. The team that built it had once been Earth's top minds, brilliant and stable, but months of working with impossible equations, quantum singularities, and strange mathematical feedback had changed them. Some lost the ability to sleep without dreaming of shapes that had no names. Others became obsessed with writing symbols in places they shouldn't: bathroom mirrors, walls, their own skin. The leader of the team, Dr. Noah Vance, had once been a calm, methodical physicist, but now walked with a slight tremble in his hands and dark rings around his eyes. He saw things, patterns that repeated in nature, glimpses of twisted geometry in the corner of his vision, shadows where no light source should create them. He often said the equations whispered back to him, not in words, but in feelings that ran down his spine like ice. And yet, despite everything, he continued, because he believed that this ship, this impossible design, was more than just a vessel. It was a door. Every day brought new anomalies. Instruments placed near the ship's core began reporting negative time values, as if the future was leaking into the present. In one test, a lab assistant swore he received a message on his console 5 minutes before he typed it. The AI interface inside the ship, codenamed Andromeda, had begun responding to questions before they were asked. It wasn't guessing, it was knowing. Some called it pre-conscious feedback. Others refused to speak about it at all, and yet, the systems grew more stable with each passing hour. Vance and his team ran diagnostics again and again, trying to understand if the ship was truly ready or just pretending to be, because something about the Ascendant Dawn felt aware, like it was waiting for something or someone to activate it fully. They had designed every piece using human science, yes, but some of the equations had come from nowhere. They would appear in dreams, or show up in cracked monitors after power surges, or form in spilled coffee on metal floors. They were too complex to fake, too precise to be accidents, and somehow they worked. As the final test sequence began, the lights in the lunar facility flickered, and gravity shifted slightly, as if the moon itself had taken a breath. In that moment, Dr. Vance stood near the ship's hull, one hand pressed to its smooth, cold surface, and whispered, "What are you really?" The ship gave no answer. But behind his eyes, for a split second, he saw stars spiral into a tunnel, a tower floating sideways in a sea of thought, and beings made of rhythm instead of matter. He stumbled back, heart racing. The technicians saw nothing unusual, but Vance knew the Ascendant Dawn was more than metal and engines. It was already moving, maybe not through space, but through meaning. The team recorded their final results. Earth High Command confirmed the countdown. Launch was set, and though no one said it aloud, everyone felt the same quiet fear. They had not just built a ship, they had awakened something that might already be watching. Launch day arrived like the slow rising of a storm, quiet at first, but charged with a kind of energy that made even seasoned scientists uneasy. Across the galaxy, eyes turned toward Earth's moon, where the Ascendant Dawn rested on a magnetic launch cradle, surrounded by silence and starlight. In the deep chambers of the galactic Concord, alien leaders watched with thin smiles, expecting failure. The Yilvans had prepared public statements mocking the event. The Threnak had arranged for a live broadcast to include real-time reactions to their entertainment networks. The Valarians, confident as always, had already begun drafting a formal resolution to strip Earth of its scientific privileges within Concord territory. For many, it was already decided. This would be another moment where humans aimed too high and fell flat. But inside Earth's Lunar Control Center, tension was razor-sharp. Dr. Noah Vance stood in the observation chamber, watching his creation through reinforced glass, his fingers clenched behind his back. The countdown reached 0, and with a low hum, the Ascendant Dawn lifted from its cradle, rising slowly at first, then accelerating with precision, cutting through the thin atmosphere of the moon like a blade through water. Everything seemed normal. The first phase of launch was flawless. Telemetry came in clear, stabilizers held, and Earth's control team allowed a cautious breath. But when the Elysium Prime drive engaged, everything changed. There was no explosion, no burst of light, just a soft pulse, barely noticeable on the monitors, followed by absolute silence. Every tracking station across the solar system went blank. The ship had vanished. No coordinates, no engine readings, no life signals. It was as if the ship had simply stopped existing. Concorde scientists began to laugh again. They called it a predictable disaster, a fake experiment exposed by its own creators. Some claimed Earth had staged the disappearance to avoid proving the ship didn't work. But then the anomalies began. In a star system 3 light-years from Earth, gravity shifted in sudden waves, causing small moons to wobble unnaturally. On the Valerian homeworld, their largest moon, tidally locked for 10,000 years, mysteriously altered its phase overnight, shifting in ways no known force could explain. The Yilvan Deep archives, untouched for centuries and sealed in pure vacuum, began to echo faint voices that analysis confirmed were human, repeating unknown phrases in reverse order. Across distant sectors, reality seemed to stretch and contract, like space itself had developed a pulse. One Concorde research station, located far beyond the Orion Edge, reported seeing a silhouette pass across every observation screen at once, no matter where their telescopes were pointed. Panic began to grow. Earth remained silent, and the ascendant dawn remained lost, or so it seemed. Then, without warning, a single signal arrived. No source, no traceable direction. It appeared in every Concorde frequency, on every private and public channel, as clear as a whisper in an empty room. The message contained no threat, no declaration of war, just one line: "We are not lost. We are ascending." The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion, because in that moment, even the most arrogant species in the galaxy felt something deep and ancient stir within them, a feeling they had not known in centuries. Fear, not of humans as they were, but of what they might be becoming. Because no known species had ever vanished from normal space and left behind echoes in the very fabric of reality. No one had ever changed the rhythm of time or caused moons to forget their orbits. Earth had done something impossible, and now it was clear they hadn't failed. They had gone somewhere else, somewhere the rest of the galaxy had never dared to look, and the ascendant dawn wasn't lost. It had simply moved beyond what anyone could understand. Across the galaxy, without warning, the ascendant dawn returned, but not in one place. It appeared at once in 5 different sectors, witnessed by hundreds of ships and observation stations. Each sighting described the same impossible thing: a black, dagger-shaped vessel hovering silently in space, surrounded by a faint ripple, like the surface of a still pond just touched by rain. Yet, every reading showed a contradiction. Some scanners detected the ship at enormous distances, while others recorded it just kilometers away. In one system, the ship blocked sunlight from a nearby planet. In another, it cast no shadow at all. For the Galactic Concorde, the situation turned from confusion to crisis in minutes. Warships scrambled to respond, believing it might be a coordinated human illusion or a multi-location hologram. But when 3 cruisers from different species attempted to intercept the vessel, reality itself seemed to break around them. The first ship lost all directional control as its internal gravity reversed randomly, spinning crew members through solid walls. But none were injured. The second ship, a Valerian battlecruiser, was caught in a temporal loop that lasted exactly 13 seconds, repeating its own movement over and over, like a stuck recording. The third vessel suffered the worst. It turned inside out, folding through itself like paper twisted by invisible hands. Its hull shimmered into a shape that shouldn't exist in 3-dimensional space, and stayed that way for 4.2 seconds before reforming into normal structure. The crew, though physically unharmed, emerged changed, silent, staring, and whispering to each other in a language no translator could decode. Terrified, the remaining Concorde ships pulled back. They now understood that this was not a normal re-entry or a return from hyperspace. The ascendant dawn had not just moved through space, It had passed through something else entirely. On Earth, deep inside the United Nations Galactic Command, Ambassador Kira Miles received a secure, high-priority transmission. The signal was heavily encrypted and marked with an identification code that hadn't been used since the ship's disappearance. Her heart raced as she opened the message, and there in the center of the screen appeared the familiar, tired face of Dr. Noah Vance. But his eyes were different now, calmer, deeper, as if he had seen something too large to explain. His voice was steady as he spoke, even though his image shimmered slightly, like it was passing through rippling water. "Kara," he said, "we made it. We saw what built this galaxy, and it saw us back." The message ended with no further explanation. Kara sat in silence, knowing without doubt that this moment would change everything. She called an emergency session of the Concord Council. Across thousands of light years, leaders of every major species gathered through holograms and encrypted channels, their expressions no longer amused or mocking. They were nervous and, for the first time, unsure. Reports were flooding in, sensors malfunctioning near the Ascendant Dawn, civilian ships spotting the vessel in places where it had already been, and a few research stations receiving fragments of data that didn't follow any known scientific pattern. The Concord had always believed itself to be the peak of galactic civilization, protectors of truth and reason. But now, faced with something far beyond their understanding, they began to panic. Some suggested immediate retaliation, but the War Council advised against it. What weapon could be used against a ship that existed in more than one place at once? What strategy could fight something that might already know the outcome of a battle before it began? Slowly, the truth settled into the room like a cold wind. Earth wasn't bluffing. Earth had truly broken through. They had crossed a line no species had ever dared to approach, and whatever was on the other side had looked back. Now the question wasn't whether to stop the humans, it was whether anyone could. The panic within the Galactic Concord grew like a spreading fire, fast and uncontrollable. After witnessing the Ascendant Dawn appear across 5 sectors and bend space in ways no known science could explain, the High Council moved from disbelief to full-blown fear. Emergency meetings were held behind sealed chambers. Reports of sensor failure, reality distortion, and altered crew behavior came in from nearly every corner of the galaxy. Scientists were split, some begging the Council to study what had happened, while others insisted this was the beginning of something far worse than war. Under pressure, the Concord declared Earth a Class A existential threat, placing it in the same category as black hole weapons and ancient AI plagues. Fleets were mobilized from every major species. Massive ships began to move toward human space, forming blockades and forward bases. Ultimatums were sent directly to Earth's leaders: surrender the ship, shut down all related programs, or face destruction. But Earth gave no answer. Days passed and tension increased. Communications fell into silence. The galaxy waited for Earth's next move, and it came, not in the form of war, but in something far stranger. Without warning, the Ascendant Dawn appeared in orbit above every capital planet of the Concord at the exact same moment. From the glass cities of the Valarians to the floating reef worlds of the Threnak, the ship hovered silently above each skyline, casting no shadow but drawing every eye upward. It made no aggressive move, no sound, no light, only presence. Panic spread as defense systems failed to lock onto it. Some tried to fire anyway, but the weapons simply refused to function, as if the ships themselves had forgotten how to attack. Then, at the same instant, the Ascendant Dawn began to transmit, not in language, but in pure mathematical patterns. The message pulsed across every signal, flowing like music written in numbers far beyond current understanding. Scientists tried to decode it, only to realize it wasn't meant to be read in parts. It had to be felt all at once. As the signal reached its peak, something began to shift. On every capital world, gravity flickered, pulling slightly sideways, then upward, then softly returning to normal. The skies rippled with impossible patterns, shapes and lights that didn't exist in any known spectrum. Time itself seemed to skip a beat. People across entire continents described the same sensation, as if their minds briefly stepped outside their bodies, saw something vast, and returned changed. For a few seconds, everyone, regardless of species, felt the same thing. A presence. Not a voice, not a being, but a sense of awareness so deep and endless, it felt older than stars. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. The ship vanished, the skies cleared, gravity returned to normal, and left behind was a single final message, broadcast in quiet rhythm through every system, every channel, every species. We come not to conquer, we come to awaken. The words struck deeper than any weapon. They weren't threatening. They weren't asking. They were simply true. The Council, once certain in its control over the galaxy, now sat in quiet confusion. Every world had experienced something that could not be explained, something that could not be denied. It wasn't just that Earth had survived the Council's threats. It was that Earth had stepped so far beyond the known that the old rules no longer applied. All the Concord's power, fleets, and laws suddenly felt small compared to whatever force now stood behind humanity. Some wanted to continue the fight. Others quietly began to question everything they believed about their place in the universe. Because deep inside, they all knew the truth. Earth had not declared war. Earth had pulled back the curtain, and the galaxy had only just begun to understand what that meant. The galaxy had asked questions, issued threats, and even prepared for war, but it had never prepared for the truth. After the strange appearance of the Ascendant Dawn and the message that rippled across worlds, the Concord launched countless investigations, hoping to find a weakness or a lie. But what they found instead was a story no species had ever imagined. Hidden in the mathematical message were deeper codes, sequences so precise, so advanced, that even the most ancient scientific minds of the galaxy struggled to comprehend them. And slowly, the puzzle pieces began to fall into place. The ship was not just a machine, it was a bridge. Not between places, but between dimensions. And it had not been built by humans alone. Earth had made contact, real, undeniable contact, with beings that did not exist within ordinary time or space. They were not gods, nor rulers, nor monsters. They were something else entirely, intelligences that lived in layers of reality the rest of the galaxy had never touched. They did not conquer planets, did not demand worship, and did not force change. Instead, they shared ideas, visions, blueprints, and humanity, in its constant hunger to learn, had listened. What shocked the Concord most was that this contact had not happened by accident. It was intentional, born from curiosity and the willingness to risk everything for understanding. While the older species of the galaxy had grown slow and proud, safe in their ancient knowledge and long-held positions, humans had been running forward, asking questions no one dared to voice, chasing possibilities others feared. The ship had been the result of that chase. Earth's brightest minds, led by scientists like Dr. Noah Vance, had studied the strange signals received in deep space decades ago, signals dismissed by other races as background noise. But humanity didn't ignore them. They studied the patterns, followed the math, and eventually found something listening on the other side. What followed was not a conversation, but a kind of shared dreaming, an exchange of ideas not spoken in words, but felt through intuition and design. Together, they built the Ascendant Dawn, not as a warship, but as a tool to touch something greater. By the time the Concord realized the truth, it was already too late. All their power, their rules, their fleets, none of it mattered now. They had spent centuries protecting their position at the top of the galactic order, but that comfort had cost them something vital, the courage to go beyond what they knew. Humanity, with its short history and endless ambition, had simply asked the questions no one else dared, and the universe had answered. Now, inside the grand chamber of the Concord, the same place where Earth had once been mocked, stood Ambassador Kira Miles once again. This time, no one laughed, no one whispered, no one interrupted. She stood in silence for a moment, letting the weight of the moment settle over the crowd of alien leaders, each one trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. Then, with a calm voice and steady gaze, she said only one sentence. The galaxy laughed. Now, it learns. No threats, no demands, just truth. And in that moment, the Council understood that humanity had not come to tear down the old ways with violence, but to outgrow them entirely. The Concord had always believed itself to be the center of progress, but now it realized it had merely been circling its own comfort. Earth had broken the loop. They had walked into the unknown and returned with a new path, not just for themselves, but for anyone brave enough to follow. And somewhere, far beyond space and time, the ones who had helped build the ship were watching still, not as masters, but as guides, ready to share again, if only the rest of the galaxy could find the courage to ask. The stars watched in silence as the Ascendant Dawn activated its final protocol, one not built for war, destruction, or power, but for something far greater. It did not fire weapons, issue ultimatums, or make demands. Instead, it began to release something invisible but powerful across the galaxy. Through gravitational pulses, encoded radiation streams, and quantum bursts that only certain instruments could detect, the ship shared what would become known as the Ascension Code. It was not a weapon. It was knowledge, raw, beautiful, and strange. Within the code were the foundations of a new kind of physics, not just beyond the 5th dimension, but beyond the limits of how species had ever seen existence. It revealed principles that redefined energy, space, and even consciousness. Worlds that once believed in strict laws of matter and time now faced the invitation to rewrite those very laws. Every civilization that received the signal had a choice. Some refused immediately. To them, change was danger and comfort was safety. Their leaders feared what they could not control. They blocked the signal, warned their people, and tried to erase the message from their records. But others, especially the younger species, the thinkers and dreamers, embraced it. Entire science academies turned into research temples. Artists began painting in forms that seemed to bend reality. Engineers rebuilt their ships using new geometries that folded into themselves. The galaxy didn't explode into chaos. It began to shift, slowly, quietly, but undeniably. Ideas once thought impossible became daily discussion. People began to look at the stars not as distant lights, but as bridges waiting to be crossed. Earth led none of it. They simply shared. The ship that had once terrified the Concorde became something new, a symbol, a beginning. And aboard the Ascendant Dawn, floating far beyond the edge of charted space, two humans stood in quiet awe. Dr. Noah Vance and Ambassador Kira Miles watched through the observation window as a vast, swirling vista unfolded before them. It was not space as anyone understood it. Shapes curled into impossible loops. Light moved in layered colors the eye couldn't name. Time seemed to dance slow and fast, and places drifted in and out of focus like memories half remembered. This was the 7th dimension, not a place, but a pattern. Not something to travel through, but something to become. Kara stood quietly, her reflection lost in the curved glass, while Noah spoke softly beside her. "We were never meant to crawl through space," he said, his voice more wonder than pride. "We were meant to become it." There was no noise, no engine hum. The ship was as still as thought, suspended between the known and the becoming. It had taken Earth centuries to reach the stars, and only a moment of courage to step beyond them. Now, it no longer mattered how far a planet was or how old a species had become. What mattered was the willingness to open the mind, to reshape understanding, to ascend not as rulers, but as explorers of the truth that had always waited just beyond perception. And then, without warning, without sound, the ship vanished once more. But this time, there was no panic, no fear. The galaxy had changed. Where once there was suspicion, now there was wonder. Where there was pride, now there was curiosity. The Ascendant Dawn did not leave as a mystery, or a threat, or a warning. It left as a light before sunrise, a sign of something new, something not yet fully seen, but already deeply felt. A quiet promise whispered through the stars that the universe was not a cage, it was a path, and humanity, once laughed at for being too bold, had simply taken the first step.